the Silently podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, brand safety, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Welcome to Silently's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. It's been a long day, right? We've been here for a while. We've been doing different things, being on stages, and it's been a lot of fun. But, you know, as I've told you guys all day today to the listeners, we're talking a lot about marketing in a time of constantly shifting risk and opportunity. It's a struggle for all of us, and we are very, very lucky to have with us today somebody I've looked up to for a while, and she doesn't even know I know her. So, you know, listen, when you're an outsider and you're a vendor in our industry, you pay attention to a lot of the great people who drive the dollars that go the other way. And I've watched Deva move up the ranks of the industry, and it's well-deserved. So let's give ourselves a fake round of applause for having our friend Deva with us today. I'm going to kick it over to you, Deva, to tell everyone about what you do, what your role is, and we'll jump in.
Wonderful. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure. I was born in digital 23 years ago, fell into the industry not knowing what the heck I was doing, fell in love with it very quickly. I'm currently at Dentsu. I've been at Dentsu for about 4.5 years now. In the last 6 months, I transitioned over to lead brand assurance globally for Dentsu. And brand assurance is our term sort of catch-all for media responsibility. So very much centered on what we're talking about here at this conference now, brand safety and so forth. Also aspects of sustainability, extending the diversity conversation, philanthropy, data ethics, you name it, we think about it.
So your job's very easy.
It is, yeah. We don't do anything ever.
Starting with just a little bit about your job, and then we'll jump into more. You know, do you feel sometimes lonely on an island in your role, or do you feel lately like it's becoming more integrated? Obviously, it's becoming more profound, right?
Yeah.
Now you're starting to hear that. And I've been asking this too, so I'll throw this in as a follow-up to that. Like, you never thought you were going to be in this role 15, 20 years ago because there was none of this discussed. So how have you taught yourself? How have you embraced it? And how have you done a good job of kind of bringing things together within your organization?
Sure. So for the first part of your question, sometimes it can get a little bit lonely, but that's when I tap into my talent as a bull in a china shop. I kind of just elbow my way into meetings and conversations and repeatedly explain why it's important to think of safety and to think of doing good, right? Because you're right. This time that we're in right now, these are crazy times. And it was weird kismet that I was asked to take on this responsibility because I do have a bit of a history of being an activist, just way back in like my family roots, my personal roots.
So cool.
So it really, it's been a lot. It's a difficult job, but it's super gratifying that I've been able to focus on doing what's good and building sort of practices around it.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and focusing on that, you know, jumping into more of a conversation around brands, right? Obviously, Dentsu's, you guys are amazing, right? One of the things that I think makes Dentsu great is a lot of the reports you guys put out. You guys do a phenomenal job. We read them all the time on how brands think and why they think. So you guys use very, very strong data to be able to make a lot of the decisions that you guys do, which I think is unique, right? In terms of your, like, how do you see brands being able now to navigate this speed of culture and the tendency, frankly, for people to align with their own values versus what a brand thinks about? So how do you guys think about that today?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your observation. It's very important that we at Dentsu are data-based and science-based whenever possible, so that we can, track goals and we can have everything be measurable and we can interpret data on the back end for any goal that we try to achieve. So the answer to your second question is, we got to be careful these days, right? Because, the narrative is always changing. The news cycle never stops now. It used to be, my husband and I used to joke years ago that when you turn on the news, maybe on a Friday afternoon, and like every channel had something about a shark sighting, like off the coast of Long Island. They're like, oh, okay, the week is done. The news cycle has died down. But that doesn't happen anymore. Like everything is breaking news on every channel, So,
Do you
so
think it's because
difficult.
there's so many more sources today that we feel that way, right? Or do you think it's actually become different? Our perception and mine at least is that people have become more aware. I think so. I think that's good and bad,
Yeah.
right, from an awareness standpoint. But then you have the side of it where it's sad to just see so much negativity, right?
Yeah.
So how do you guys at Dentsu think about opportunity when there feels like a lot of risk out there?
Yeah. So, yes, I do believe people are more aware. I do believe there is more access to what is happening. I won't always say news, but there is definitely more access. Creation of content, as we've been saying all week, has become democratized. There's just a lot more out there. I do believe, to a certain extent, we as Americans, but also we as humans, as the human race, we're used to this sort of constantly being locked in, a state of panic, which is it's uncomfortable, but it's also an opportunity to have these difficult conversations. It's also an opportunity to create processes and to decide how we are going to react, how our clients are going to react, so we don't get caught in a position, hopefully, where we are behind the eight ball and have to make things happen very, very quickly.
And I think that's a very interesting concept that you bring up about not being behind the eight ball. But you actually just heard me, and I really do believe that brands also need to give more of a benefit of the doubt to a lot of their agencies too, because frankly, you guys are learning with them along the way, right? With so much change, how do they expect you guys to know all the answers? So what do you focus on when you're learning? Like, where do you go to learn? How do you educate? How do you educate yourself? Like, would be how I think about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I educate myself by trying to limit my intake of information to things that are not opinion, things that are fact based, and using sources that are middle of the road and trustworthy. Yes, I do personally love a little bit of scandalous news content. I have
Who doesn't?
yeah, and I have a long history of loving celebrity news specifically. It's like the ultimate escape. Whenever you don't want to think about your life anymore. But it's important, if I'm building a framework for a client, that we tap into middle of the road, that we tap into fact, that we tap into science when we can, and exclude any of the chatter from outside, and be ready to have those conversations.
You brought up a really, really good point. I mean, obviously, how do you do that if you don't have a better strategic way of onboarding a client? Right. So for me, what I think is a lot of our conversation today, and obviously not to be selfish about what we do here at Sightly, but ultimately our belief is that you need to get back to humanizing a brand the way they are broken down today, right? People look at competitors, influencers, different things, but what we haven't done well is put all that into one place, right? And I think so. I think that that's the place to create more opportunity. That's just our belief. Obviously, everyone's gonna have their own belief, and I think as you join our podcast more, hopefully, and we get to know each other, I'm open to very different opinions. And I think what's critical, right, is that we figure out a way to not look at opinion-based news. I understand that part of it, but to get to a place where we all can have the conversations. Because what ends up happening is then we start focusing on ROI, right?
Right.
And I was there Tuesday at the amazing DEI day. And once you start focusing on ROI, and let's just say that doesn't happen quickly, people tend to give up, right? So in a world where ROI drives the fact that marketers are getting let go faster and faster than ever, how do we have those balancing conversations about consistency of these important topics, right? That's something that keeps me up all the time, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about that as you educate your clients?
As my grandfather used to say, that is the $64,000 question. That you have to have the hard conversation. You have to be brave, and you have to start. We are the agents of our clients. It is our responsibility to approach them. We can't always sit back and be reactive.
I agree with
That's
that.
one of the things that we at Dentsu try to do. Always, be proactive in informing our clients of situations, making recommendations. We don't make anybody do anything ever. because we are a client-centric business. But yeah, the only way to really do it is to have the the courage to have the hard conversation.
How long have you been at Dentsu?
Been at Dentsu for a little bit more than 4.5 years.
So let's say you were there for 11 and a half years.
Yes.
Let's fast forward a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
What would you hope that data that we're missing today that could help make this better? Like if you had your own opinion on a piece of data that you think's missing, what would that be? And it's a hard question, but
it is a hard question. I don't know what this even is. I just, find myself wishing for this all the time. I wish there was some sort of consumer sentiment meter that we could tie to macroeconomic trends, for instance, or political trends that would, I don't want to say help us predict how the conversation in the country is going to go, but would make us a little bit more informed.
So we should
when
talk.
it does. Yeah.
So we should talk.
Does that sound familiar?
Very familiar to us.
Yeah, good.
And that's part of the point that I think I was trying to make today in all these conversations with people is obviously I want to talk less and let you give a lot of your opinion. But when I think about a lot of these things, we've gotten to a place where we're starting to put people in buckets in a way that I actually think is what we didn't want to do.
Right.
So I actually think what would make the world a better place, and media is a big driver of that. Yeah, obviously no fact. You want to know what's factual. You want to know all the things we're talking about. That's a huge point because think about it, right? Something that bothers me may not bother you. Something that bothers you may not bother me. So how do you judge that based on your own specific perspective is to me the key for what we think. And I think that's the type of metric. And I think one of the things we think about a lot, this is why I'm happy you're bringing this up, is that we should be working together on those things. I think what happens is a lot of the time you have the agency, you got the brand, and everyone's like, do you got the perfect thing yet?
Mm-hmm.
I think what we all need to do is get together and agree on what we believe together. And then you can get to a place to start to build those things. Because a metric like that, a lot of people have to believe it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say to your clients, Deva, like, I believe that metric and here's why.
Yeah.
Right? So I think ultimately, I agree with you 100% on that. How you get there is going to be the trick. But, thinking about that in closing, right? And obviously I don't want to, like we discussed, I would never put you on the spot at all. So, but give me an example of some influencers or brands that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Like people that make you make decisions, people that when you wake up every day, you're like, yeah, that drives my decision.
Right. So I'm going to answer this sort of two ways. Because I'm a Gen Xer, I have some opinions that some younger listeners might not understand. So because I'm a Gen Xer, I can say I love brands like Tide and Bounty and Hellmann's. I know they're different manufacturers, but I'm just saying because my mother loved them and because my grandmother loved them before that, right? So in the history of this country, in
so
the history
legacy
of advertising,
matters to you.
Yes. And I don't know that I've ever really stopped to understand why. I love these, these
sounds
old
like
brands.
you love those people and that matter to you.
Yeah. And I mean, Kleenex and, you name it. I don't know that I really understand why. I just know that I do because I believe like that my mother knew what she was doing, right? So that's the first half of the answer. The second half of the answer is around influencers. And it's different for me because, again, I am Gen X. So influencer is sort of new. It didn't always exist. I like a good mix of folks. I like my traditionals like Oprah and her favorite things. But I also enjoy Aisha Curry. I also love Dylan Mulvaney, who is really big on TikTok right now. I think she's super brave. So it's a really good mix of people that I will listen to.
Do you find yourself, to that point, making more decisions on what you buy lately based on what a brand believes?
Yes, absolutely. I do think that has to do with, again, my history around activism. I tend to rely heavily on my moral compass, and I recognize that and respect that in other people and other brands.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this was a very unique conversation that we're having today on Breaking Through the Mayhem. And thanks, Deva. Seriously, thank you for being so open. Thank you for being so real. And I hope to get to know you even better over the next couple of months and years.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it.
Hi, I'm Joe, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you can fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.